That mental chatter in your head can lead to insecurity, depression, and anxiety. Welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Break. Megan Zaharas, a national board certified health and wellness coach, joins me to talk about challenging the automatic mental chatter and improving your mindset for better mental health. Hi, I'm Dr. Nafisa Sikandri, a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in anxiety-based disorders. I created the Mental Health Break podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you prioritize your mental health. Mental illness can cost you time and money. Ignoring your symptoms will only make the problems worse. Taking time out of your busy day to dedicate to improving your mental health can lead to long-term health and wellness. In this podcast, each week you'll learn tips, tricks, and proven strategies to help you regain control of your life, all while prioritizing your mental health. If you want to improve your life, regain control of your mental health, and feel empowered, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transforming Anxiety course, an online, self-paced anxiety course to help you manage and control your anxiety from the comfort, privacy, and convenience of your own home. Learn how to transform your anxiety in just 6 short weeks. Course registration is now open. To learn more, visit transforminganxiety.com/course. Today, I'm joined by Megan Zaharas, also known as Megan Sophie, and we'll be talking about the importance of taming that inner self-critic and changing our mindset. Let me introduce her before I bring her on. As a national board certified health and wellness coach and coaching certificates in lifestyle medicine and diabetes prevention, Megan's passion is to promote overall well-being and teach tiny steps for big impact. Megan was one of the first coaches in the nation to earn a national board certification. Megan also holds a master's in healthcare administration and health education and a bachelor's of science in kinesiology and health promotion. With a decade of experience in the wellness field, she teaches women how to become the healthiest versions of themselves. She loves teaching others how to create lasting lifestyle changes through habits, positive mindset, and healthy cooking for real food. As a busy mother of 2, she understands the struggle of juggling multiple responsibilities while trying to stay active and make healthy meals for her family. Megan is best known for her friendly, warm, and encouraging approach. She is bringing her years of one-on-one group coaching experience online to provide support, accountability, motivation, and healthy lifestyle tips. Hi, Megan. Thank you for joining us for this podcast episode. I'm so excited to talk to you about mindset and that inner critic.
Hi, Dr. Sikandri. It's so good to see you too. Thanks so much for having me on.
So let's just get started. I just shared a little bit about your background and your experience with health and wellness. Can you talk a little bit about your training and the people that you serve?
Yeah, so went through both the Real Balance global wellness training and then went on to become national board certified. And that's kind of where health and wellness coaching is moving towards more of a national board certification to really recognize those coaches who have gone through the stringent training to understand, the basics of health coaching, to be able to bring the profession up a level that it hasn't been for the 20 plus years that health coaches have been doing this.
Well, that's good. Thank you for sharing all that. And being the first to be board certified, that's amazing. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there was, when they first rolled it out, there were, I believe, 1,000 across the nation that had set for board certification. And I was one of those that, decided to kind of take it on. So, yeah.
Wow, way to take advantage of that. That's great. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about that inner self-critic and then also impacting our mindset as well. So how can we challenge that little voice inside of us that seems to have so much power over us? And then is there a purpose to that voice and how can we calm that inner critic?
Yeah, so great question. So the first thing I think that is super important, and especially when it comes to working with health coaching clients, what I try to kind of bring forth is awareness and the fact that this inner critic even exists. For a lot of people, they don't maybe know that our brain works in 2 different ways. We have what's termed sometimes as system 1 and system 2. And system 1 is your limbic system. And that's typically where your inner critic is found. It's our primate brain, and it's meant to keep us safe. And really, if you look back, years and years ago, back in even the cavemen time frame, we used it in order to really understand our environment. And so it's that fight as well as the freeze response to protect us. But what has happened as we've evolved and the environment around us has evolved is we're not faced with the dangers so much as they were back then. So we're not being chased by, wild animals or, trying to find shelter for the night. And it's now more, faced with just everyday decisions that we may have. For instance, I had a gal who was trying to decide whether or not to attend this new yoga class. And as we were talking throughout the session, it was a lot of the inner critic was coming out with regards to, I'm not a yogi. I don't have experience in doing this. I'm going to look silly when I go in. A lot of this talk that was really trying to, again, keep her safe. And by first becoming aware that this even is part of our makeup, I think allows people then to recognize, okay, this is just a normal process. And then by becoming aware of that and understanding, what those thoughts are that are coming at you, you can then tap into system 2, which is your prefrontal cortex. And that's really where your analytical side, more of the logical reasoning, comes into play. And you can start really kind of dissecting and start asking, some of the important questions to understand, is this really going to be a dangerous situation I'm putting myself in? Or is it something that I'm going to find enjoyment, pursuing?
So I know that most of us, including myself, we pick up the negative chatter that, like you said, the important thing is to be aware, right? We pick the stuff up, and I caught myself saying things to myself that I know, because I grew up speaking another language at home. I knew that wasn't something I picked up from home. And I knew that I wasn't, maybe I could have gotten it from friends, but I was too young to have picked it up there because I wasn't in this country at that time. So what I noticed was I picked it up from the TV shows that I was watching. And I picked up the negative self chatter and I adopted it, and it became part of my own self-talk. How can we, so unless we're aware, we're not going to really know what the source is. And a lot of times we hear it from other people, or maybe we might have been bullied, or we might have heard somebody else call somebody else that name, and then we start doing it to ourselves. How can we change that inner script in order to be able to calm that self-critic?
Yeah, that's a great question. Personally, and from experience working with other people, and then even for myself, because I deal with this as well. I think we all do. It kind of depends on the situation, but there's 2 things that I always encourage people to do. One of them is to constantly have the 4 agreements in mind, as well as, posted up on a mirror or even on your phone. And for those that may not be familiar, it comes from Don Miguel Ruiz, and he wrote a book called The 4 Agreements. And the first one is to be impeccable with your word. And a lot of this has to do with, speaking to yourself as well as to others with integrity and with truth. The next one is to not take anything personally. We have a tendency, I think, as just human beings, anything that's coming at us, we tend to think it has to do with us, where a lot of times it may have to do with, the other individual and something that they're experiencing. The third is to not make any assumptions. And I think this is imperative, especially when it comes to your inner critic, whether it's conflict that you're dealing with other people, or maybe a conversation you've left and you walk away thinking, did I understand what they said? Is that really what they meant? Instead of going down the rabbit hole and, creating a story, it's a matter of going back to that individual and asking the questions and clarifying what was said and kind of what took place. And then the last one is to always do your best. And I think this is imperative because it changes on a day-to-day basis. We show up different every single day and sometimes every single hour. And it's a matter of giving yourself grace and recognizing that you just do your best in that moment. Beyond the 4 agreements, another tool that I find to be powerful is what I deem, and I believe I had read about this years ago, but walking through the 3 doors. The first one is asking yourself, is this true? And I even kind of add an extra bonus to that. where then you continue on, well, how do I know this to be true? And it may again be an assumption that you have or a thought, negative thoughts that are coming at you. And if you are able to say yes to those, then you move down to the next door, which is it kind? Then the third one would be, is it necessary? And I add /helpful. And I find that even for myself, if I'm kind of in that, that monkey brain or my limbic system, is kicking in and just going wild, if I walk myself through those doors, and sometimes I go through all three, I'll find that more times than not knows the answer. And so then I'm like, okay, able to kind of move forward. And it also allows, again, that prefrontal cortex to kick in. The third tool that I'll mention, because I use this a lot as well with clients, and it's kind of fun in the sense that in order to understand, again, that our inner critic, yes, is a part of us, but it's also important to be able to separate it, is to come up with what your inner critic or what your gremlin, for instance, looks like. Give that individual, a personality, a look. And one thing that I've had clients do by being able to do this, when that voice pops in, it's like, oh, there's Samantha again, kind of spewing all her lies or negative thoughts, again, trying to keep me safe, but not allowing me to move forward. They can also have fun with that in terms of maybe taking on a different voice and becoming a performer. So again, you're separating yourself from that inner critic. Beyond then being able to kind of, give that inner critic an identity, some other powerful things to go with that is when it does pop up, is to have positive affirmations, either memorized in your head, or of course, what's always really powerful is to have them written down and posted somewhere. Again, if it's, in your bathroom, on your mirror, or on your phone, so that you can go straight to it and read it, whether it be out loud or to yourself, and just kind of, again, allow yourself to not engage with the negative thoughts that are going on, but give your brain time to switch over to the prefrontal cortex, the more logical thinking.
When you were saying that, it made me think about how we talk to other people's kids, like a little kid, and we talk to our friends and babies in such a kind way, and we're so thoughtful, and we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But when it comes to ourselves, we don't do that. We think that we have to beat ourselves up and be really mean to ourselves in order to get ourselves motivated or to change. But our brain is always listening. And so being kind and asking that question, is this kind? Is this necessary? Is so important. You also mentioned the little gremlin. I have a little pencil with a little head, but I give that to my patients so that they can separate themselves from that inner critic. I had a patient that named hers Fred. So we would always talk about what's Fred saying now? Why is Fred saying that? Is what Fred's saying the truth? And so I like that you also have a little gremlin analogy, because it's important for us to separate. A lot of times our irrational voice is just that. It's irrational. It's not the truth. And we need to separate what's rational versus from our brain just freaking out like Chicken Little in our head, right?
Yeah. No, and I think myself, coming from a place of, I have a history of anxiety and depression, and I see it within even my own family, but we have a tendency to engage sometimes, like you said, with those negative thoughts. And then I almost look at it like, I've heard it termed like your chimp brain or monkey brain. So it's like you're allowing the monkey just to go crazy, and it's throwing bananas everywhere and you're just chasing it. The important thing, again, it comes back to being aware that it's even there. And then once you start hearing it, it's like, don't engage, don't start following what it's, telling you, but really then start utilizing those tools to separate. And, say, okay, I recognize you're there, but I'm going to give myself grace. And this is, the direction that I'm going to go in. Again, whether it's, positive affirmations or, just the going down the 3 doors again, and just asking, is this really true? Or, is this just the craziness?
Right. And I also tell my patients, like, if I was following you around every single day, 24 hours, and just saying all those horrible things that you're hearing inside your head, you'd be running away from me really quickly and ditching me, right? You're not going to want me around. But for some reason, we listen to this voice and believe everything to be true. I mean, for me, I had an epiphany in my 20s when I saw a bumper sticker that said, "Not every thought you have is true." It's just like, what? I didn't even consider that. I thought every thought I had was true.
Mm.
And so that really helped me start the separation process. And again, I also struggle with anxiety and have a family history of it. And so for us, it's such a constant chatter that we don't even separate what's ours versus what's that little voice, right?
Mhm.
Especially with anxiety, it's constantly going and going and going, and we have to separate it. And like you said, calling it a name, giving it a personality, maybe even thanking it for that comment, like, "Oh, thank you for saying that, but I'm going to do it this way," or "I'm going to give you a limit for 5 minutes. You can be as negative as you want, and then we're going to move on to something else," right?
Yeah. Well, and that just brought up something for me too. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to read the Marie Forleo's book, The Everything is Figureoutable, but there was one technique in there that I actually did use again with a client, and I've used it myself, that I think is helpful. If you find yourself just continuing down again the rabbit hole and just everything's coming at you, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, get a piece of paper out and write down what it is that's being said. And then I like what she did. She went back through and she said, then cross it out, and next to it, write BS, essentially, because it's not truth. And one of my clients came back and she's like, by the end of it, I was kind of laughing, like, this is just hysterical. Some of the things that, I tell myself all the time, because once she was able to look at it, she's like, wow, like, yeah, this isn't even, close to being true. You're able to release that, out of your body too.
Yeah, we have to catch the thoughts and look at them and see what they are, because a lot of times they're happening subconsciously and we're not even aware of what those words are. And that's a really good exercise. The thing I got from her book was distinguishing between freaked out thought versus the knowing, that intuition,
Yeah.
that our chatter is loud and obnoxious and freaking out. And so we know not to listen to that. But when we have that calm knowing, then that's our intuition that's warning us, don't do that. So it's good to separate from that sixth sense away from the chatter and the inner critic, right?
Yes, no, that's very true. And that even goes back to, the earlier, because there is a purpose that primal brain does serve, because I mean, there are situations in life where we still may be faced with dangerous situations, or even, it doesn't even have to be dangerous. Maybe you're just trying to come up with, deciding on something. But I think when we allow ourselves to sit quietly and really listen to that caring, loving voice that is trying to help guide us, that is something that is important to listen to. But you do have to separate, the two from each other, for sure.
But it comes down to just paying attention and listening and really knowing ourselves. And that's the only way we can change. It's like, once we know what we're dealing with, then obviously we can change. So that's the first step of managing the inner critic. But we also are talking about mindset. So can you tell me what your definition of mindset is, and how can we work on our own mindset in order for us to help us with health and well-being, as well as just making us be more successful in life?
So this is a great question. And it actually leads me into what I typically even find with health coaching clients that come in. So initially they will come forth and it's, wanting to lose weight and, eat healthier. And we have an opportunity to sit down and use the Wheel of Life to look at more than just the health and well-being aspect. There's the Wheel of Life that I use has 12 different areas, and it allows them to really assess, again, more than just the physical activity and the nutrition components. Mindset, in my personal opinion, I think is number one. What I found is it is what allows us to truly move forward and to create the life that we want to live. Whether it's going back to, the inner critic that tends to stop us from wanting to really pursue those things that we find might bring us enjoyment, just continuing on the habit change that we're embarking on. I think mindset is so critical. Basically, having a healthy, positive mindset and being on your team essentially is what is so important in order to move forward and, again, create positive change. One of the things that I found, and I think back to another client of mine that I worked with, again, had come forward, initially wanting to lose weight, and nutrition was a big component as well. And being able to sit down with her and really go over the Wheel of Life and take an assessment, personal development and growth, as well as, just the mindset and how she was talking to herself were really what were keeping her back or holding her back from being able to move ahead. Being able to work through those hurdles and her having control over the thoughts that she was having and being in the driver's seat allowed her to push forward and start finally creating that change that she wanted. And, the next time that she came in, she said, what I've recognized is that the biggest hurdle was myself, and being able to kind of face that helped her then, to start creating that life that she really wanted to embark upon.
Kind of reminds me of that saying of when your brain thinks that when you tell your brain you can't, it'll shut down and say, okay, because it'll believe whatever you tell it, right? If
Right.
you say, I can't, and then it's like, okay, but if you say, well, maybe I'll try, let me just try one step and then another, and taking little baby steps, right? And then
Right.
it's open to that. So the mindset to me is it's just our core beliefs in a way that we might not even be aware of. If we're so afraid, like when my daughter was little, she used to hang from the monkey bars, and there was literally this much space between her feet and the ground. But in her mind, she saw the distance as being way bigger. And no matter how much I would say, you're safe, just go ahead and let go, you're going to be okay. Because her mind believed it to be a dangerous situation, she wasn't going to let it go. And we're the same way. We might not take a chance. We might not take a class. We might not put ourselves out there because of this huge fear that we've created in our minds. And so we're not willing to try because our mindset is telling us, or that inner critic, no, it's dangerous. You're going to hurt yourself. No matter how much somebody else is saying, no, it's okay. So it's a matter of really helping them see the irrational fear that they might have created, right? And that helps with.
Yeah. And I think what you brought up too, and this is something as well that I strongly believe in, is what's termed the Kaizen way. And a lot of the philosophy behind it is taking tiny steps. And one of the things that I find to be helpful is also a way to kind of sneak past, again, that system one, that inner critic, because it doesn't, I guess, start an alarm off in your brain, right? So if you take just tiny, consistent, incremental steps, eventually you start creating change and your brain doesn't even realize it's happening. And then by the end of it, it's like, wow, like I've actually made progress. This might look like something, with weekly goals, for instance, where individuals might come in and say, and I know I'm really focused on kind of physical activity, but that's what's coming to mind. A lot of times it's like, I want to go to the gym every day this week. Or sometimes it's even 5 days, I'll start out saying, for at least an hour or at least 45 minutes. And at first we let them do that. We let them try it out, right? And they'll come back and it's like, oh, I was only able to go one time. And it's like, yeah, because alarms are going off in your head. Your brain's wanting to keep you in homeostasis. It doesn't like this change. But if you try, let's break that down. Let's, say 3 days, try to go to the gym for at least sometimes a ridiculously tiny amount, like 10 minutes, right? Just say, I'm just going to go for 10 minutes. By the time they do that, most of the time they stay for 20 or 30, right? Because they're not making this huge commitment that, again, alarms your brain and makes your brain think, oh, no, this is not like status quo. So I really like that, that philosophy of the tiny steps to create bigger change, for sure.
I do that for myself all the time. I might not want to get on the treadmill or on the elliptical and just go in for 5 minutes. And if you don't want to do it, give yourself permission. And truly, if you truly don't want to do it, then stop.
Right.
But most of the times you'll find out that once you get on for 5 minutes, you're okay with finishing it. Even with my social anxiety when I was a kid, I would tell myself, okay, I will go to this party for 5 minutes. And if I'm really uncomfortable, I'll just make an appearance, say hello, and then leave. But I found that once I got over that 5 minutes or 5 seconds, even with public speaking, that 5-10 seconds is really, really difficult for me. I will turn red, my voice will shake, all of that. But then I know if I can get past that, I'll be okay. I've learned that over time that that's my pattern. And once you pay attention to that and know, yes, it might be scary, but you'll also realize on the other side of it that, yeah, I could do that. It wasn't that bad. I survived. The world didn't open up and swallow me whole, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it's so true. And the other thing too, that you had mentioned as well, that I think it goes back to some of the things that we tell ourselves with the, I can't, or I shouldn't, or I need to. When we start recognizing that those are the words that we're using, we have the opportunity to change those. And I always say, swap it out for choose, because really that puts you back in the driver's seat. So instead of I shouldn't, it's I choose not to, or, I need to, I choose to. And by just changing that dialogue, you feel a little bit more empowered, because it's like, yeah, that's right. Like I have the ability to make this choice, and I am in the driver's seat. So, am I choosing for myself, to do this, or am I choosing, not to?
And going back to our history of anxiety, I know for myself, I want to be in control, right? And we have this illusion of control, or we think that we have control over our lives. And the choices that we make, we want to feel like we are in control. But a lot of times it's that little gremlin that's in control. And so when we make a choice, we're putting ourselves back in that driver's seat. We're saying, no, it's not. I'm not going to do it because of you. I'm doing it because of me. I'm choosing to wash my hands, or I'm choosing to go to this party. I'm choosing to go exercise. And that makes a huge difference with us feeling a sense of control instead of allowing our little inner critic to be in control.
Yep. No, that's so true. And I think, the more, again, the more positive words that we can say to ourselves, and the more, strategies and tools that we can use to, again, remind us that, we are in control, and not allowing ourselves just to kind of take a back seat and play into what may be going on, I think is an important thing to always keep in mind.
Well, we're always in control of our reactions and the choices that we're making. Obviously, we're not going to be in control of what happens outside of us. But what I found is the calmer I am, the more in control I feel inside with my choices, and being in the one that's in control of the decisions instead of my little inner critic. The less reactive I am when things happen outside of me. Like, things can happen outside of us all the time. We're never going to have control over that. We're not going to have control over what somebody says to us, how somebody treats us, or even like politics or the environment. But we have control over our choices and our own reaction. And that's where we need to focus on. Just that little bit that we have control over will make us feel more empowered than taking on the world, right?
Yes, no, that's so true. And really it even goes back to, the initial tool or analogy I had talked about earlier with the 4 agreements, because you're so right. We don't have control of our environment and what takes place and what comes our way, but we do have control over how we react to what is given to us in that information. And I think one of the things that also comes to mind, it goes back to, for instance, if there's someone that you're dealing with and it's things that maybe they're saying to you, a lot of times what's helpful is to imagine that you're holding up a mirror pointed at them, because in reality, it is a reflection of them. And I think that's important for us to keep in mind, because we all have our own unique worldviews and perspectives. And, what people may say isn't always, most of the time, 95%, if not more of the time, is not about you, right? So not to take anything personally. It's more about what's going on in their own world. But again, you have the ability to choose how you take that information and how you react to it.
I love that. I love that, imagining a mirror, just that you're pointing in front of somebody, but also imagining ourselves. Because I've said things that, other people might have taken the wrong way. And I was like, that wasn't even about you. I was just having a bad day. So the more we start paying attention to ourselves, and the more we know that we're doing some of those things that really have nothing to do with other people, we can understand how other people can be doing the same thing. And then we're not taking it so personally.
Yep. Nope. Awareness is key on both fronts, for sure. What you're saying to yourself, but as well as what you're putting out there in the world. Yes, definitely.
Exactly. Now, I know you had talked a little bit about the shoulding all over ourselves. How can we, we've mentioned some strategies, but we have a lot of those. We should do this, we should do that. So besides making a choice, are there any other strategies that you have as far as helping us not should all over ourselves?
Well, I think I mean, the main thing again, and this is so key, is to be aware that we're even saying it, because a lot of times people don't recognize that, that's the conversation or the words that they're using. And once you are aware that, I'm constantly saying I should not, or I should, it's shifting that and changing the language to where you're in control. No, I'm choosing to, or I'm choosing not to. Also just having a talk with yourself and deciding, if this is truly something that kind of reflects the person that you want to become, and is pursuing X, Y, and Z going to help bring you, to that, the end goal, or continue on your life journey that you're wanting to, embark upon. But again, I think all of it comes back down to recognizing that we're even saying it to ourselves, and making that shift with the language that we use when we are saying those words, because it is very disempowering, and you're almost like putting limits in a way on yourself as well.
And I would ask myself, who says I should? Where am I getting this need that I have to do this? I had a patient a long time ago. She was like, her parents had long passed and she was living in their house, but she said, I can't rest during the day. I can't take a nap no matter how tired I am, because I'm worried about being judged by my parents because they wouldn't let me take a nap. And a lot of times we're saying these, I should do this and this, because of things we had grown up with or limits that we had as a child. And we're continuing to apply those same strategies when they may no longer have a purpose anymore. Maybe they served a purpose back then, but they no longer serve a purpose. So even paying attention to why, who's telling us that we should, can be really liberating.
Yeah, no, that's very, very, very true. It's going back to those limiting beliefs, and again, really questioning, like you said, where is this thought coming from, and does it really serve me, in this moment, and with what I'm hoping to, embark upon or achieve. Yeah, I think that's so true, because there's so much from, whether it's past behaviors or things that we saw, not only with our loved ones, but as you shared as well, seeing things, on TV or out in social media that we've kind of taken on ourselves, and being able to tap in and say, where am I getting this information? And does it serve me, here and now in this moment?
Yeah, exactly. It's just about being more aware and more mindful, and being insightful, I guess, about what's going on inside of us, and not just mindlessly going through our day without really being aware of our thought process and the chatter that goes on all the time.
Yes, very true.
So you're also a fan of the 478 breathing technique. Can you share a little bit about what that is and how we can use it in our lives?
Yeah, so I learned this, a few years ago from an integrative medicine doctor who had studied under Dr. Weil, and he's out of Arizona, and he really does a lot of integrative type medicine, and he helps other providers tap into, I would say, more of the Eastern philosophy of things. And when it comes to breathing, one thing that is so true, especially in our American culture, our society, is we do a lot of shallow breathing. And one great analogy that he used to tell me is, if you look at a little kid, and I have little kids of my own, their bellies tend to stick out. And as we get older, we have this tendency to always just want to suck it in. And a lot of that's because, again, of society kind of telling us we need to be a certain way or look a certain way. But because of that, we tend to not fill up our lungs to their full capacity. And with the 478 breathing, it's one of several techniques out there. I personally like this one because it's a calming technique that's used. And essentially, you want to be able to build up with it and not do it for an extended period of time when you first get started, because we're so not used to not only filling our lungs fully, but also fully exhaling our breath out in its entirety. And so with the 478 philosophy, essentially, you would find a comfortable place to be sitting in, and you want to focus on taking in a deep breath for essentially 4 seconds. And as you inhale, you want to imagine that your belly is like a balloon and you're inflating it, as much as you possibly can. And once you get to that place where it's like, oh, I can't go any further, you stop and you hold that breath for 7 seconds and you kind of count. And then after you've held it, you release it for 8. And you really want to make sure at this point that you're focused again on that belly and really deflating that balloon as much as you possibly can. And what's interesting, the very first time that I did this, I actually felt like the inhalation, well, both inhalation and exhalation were, tough, but exhalation tended to be a little bit tougher because 8 seconds can be quite long. I'm going to show you how to do it real quick. Essentially, if you sit again, and we'll kind of count this out with my hands. So you're going to take a deep breath in for 4 seconds, again, filling up your belly. And I could still keep breathing out. But if you do the 4, 7, 8 breath, when you initially get started, if you can do it at least 4 times in a row, it has such a calming effect. And I know Dr. Ryle talked about the fact that it's actually been proven. I think there's, I can't remember how many studies have been done now with just breathing, but they're finding that it's almost as effective as, some of the medications that we're on, because it allows your system to really get rid of all of that, that negative energy and fully allow your lungs to get as much oxygen in as it possibly can, as well as releasing, all of the carbon dioxide, because we don't give ourselves that opportunity to do, the full deep breathing, which includes full inhalation as well as full exhalation. So it's a great practice, like I said, that I personally find to be helpful. And I've had other clients use it as well, to be able to kind of get themselves in a more calm, relaxing state.
It's so true. Just taking a breath. I mean, we're meant to breathe. Obviously, throughout the day, we take so many breaths, but we don't even realize that the majority of it is shallow. It's from our chest and not from our belly. But just doing that with you just really helped me feel very grounded and calm. And it's a very simple, easy strategy. And I'm a huge fan of Dr. Wiles. So anything that he does, I'm a fan of. But just his whole emphasis on just breathing and being more mindful and grounding ourselves, because a lot of times we experience symptoms of depression and anxiety because we're just going without stopping and pausing and taking a breath and just calming our system and grounding ourselves. And that can make a huge difference in managing our symptoms.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And just, and just being in the present moment, because I feel like, especially as we tend to always be on the go, and not just take that moment to pause. And I think if we give ourselves that opportunity, we start to recognize a lot more, that's going on around us, or even how our habits may be negatively not only affecting us, but other people around us too.
Definitely. We miss so much when we're rushing through life. And we just had a really good conversation yesterday, even about slowing down and chewing our food and really tasting the food and being more mindful at the dinner table so that you're not experiencing bloating and gas because you've shoveled that food so quickly. Just stop, slow down, let your body really, the enzymes release, and so that they can properly digest your food. We just go through life so quickly, we're not paying attention. So we need to pay attention.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
So given that all that you know now as an adult, as a mom, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self about the inner critic and a negative mindset? What are some things that you would tell yourself?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I think, again, it's, a matter of being aware that, a lot of the thoughts that go through our head aren't true. And recognizing that, a lot of what we do tell ourselves in many ways is trying to keep us safe, but in life that may not necessarily serve us, with the direction that we want to be able to go. And then I think it's also important just, to give yourself grace, to speak to yourself. I think you had mentioned this as well, as you would to a good friend or, a loved one, or even your own kids. Because if you feel like the words that you say to yourself are not something that you would ever say, to a best friend, then they have no place, in your own heart and mind, because they're not really truly serving your higher purpose and your higher calling. So just, continuing to love yourself each and every day, give yourself grace, and always, keeping that question in the back of your mind, is this true? And how do I know that to be true?
Yeah, I would definitely be a lot kinder to myself if I had to go back and know what I know now, because a lot of times we've perpetuated this negative self-talk and it's continued to take over, and just stopping and changing it can make such a big difference.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's so true.
So this was a great conversation. Thank you for being here and joining me. Where can people find you and connect with you?
So my website is megansophie.com. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Those are Megan Sophie Wellness.
It was a really good discussion. So I really appreciate you making the time and being here and talking to me.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Improving your mindset and challenging your negative self-talk is the fastest route to improving your mental health. To learn more about Megan, visit transforminganxiety.com/23. When you're there, go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts about this episode. If you haven't already, you can show support for the Mental Health Break podcast by subscribing wherever you're tuning in from today. We have some great interviews lined up, and you don't want to miss a single episode. Subscribe today so you get notified when new episodes drop. I can't wait to see you here next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.